And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Lord of the Chords, the geekiest, punniest music theory card game. This is a Kickstarter game that I was very excited about because I love music. I play a little music. I play the piano. I've toyed with playing the cornet. I can sing. I can read music. I'm not like huge into music theory, but I know some basic music theory. You need to know that stuff. But I just love music in general. I want music to be a bigger theme in board games. I wish it was. There's very few board games about music. Then this silliness of Bach and Beethoven and Haydn with cheesy grins, and the whole thing just had me just excited about it. I want to be very clear from the outset that this game's a humongous disappointment. Like, I just don't like the game at all. Blech. But I wanted to preface all that with saying how much I was excited about it. But let's talk a bit about how it works, and we'll come back and I'll tell you why I'm not a big fan. Okay, so you are going to be in a certain key. So let's say that the key is C major, and the key of the music will change as time goes by. But if you're in C major, you just need to form one of the chords in C major. So the major chord, the C, E, G, the minor chord, D, F, A, and so on. If you get any one of those three sets of notes in front of you, then let's say you have all three notes, then you can claim this chord, and then you'll change the key to any key that you want. Now, you're not always going to be able to have the notes that you want, so you can play sharps and or flats on them to change the notes up or down. So this is now B sharp. So now you would say, okay, that's B sharp, and now I'm going to go a note above that, and that would be, I guess, C sharp, as you move up and down the scale. Now, you can get more of these tokens, but let's talk about how the game works. On a player's turn, the first thing that they do is they're going to draft cards, draw cards from what's called the river here. You draw any three cards from the river. There's two decks of cards, the note cards and then the action cards. The action cards will do all sorts of actions. The note cards are just various note cards from there. You then have three moves to do after that. Two of those moves, think of them as action points, can be drawing another card. But the other ones, you can play a card. So if you play a note card in front of you, you're starting to build the chords that you need to get these. You can play an action card, and there's a pile of action cards you can play. You can move a note, so you're building chords in front of you. You might move a note from one spot to another. And you can trade notes in for more of these accidental tokens. To trade them in, you're going to look at the bottom of the card. So these note cards are a note. So this is G sharp, A flat, same note. And at the bottom here, you see it's a half note. This one here is a quarter note, and this is a quarter and a half note. So for every quarter and a half note, you get one of these tokens, which means if you turn in a half note, you get one token because you don't get change. But if I turned in the half note and a quarter note, then that's 6/8 of a note, which would give me two of these tokens. So you just discard those to get that. The action cards, let's take a look at them here. So this says, when a chord's completed, steal the last note played, including its tokens to your hand. Here you can draw cards from the deck, and you just keep drawing, and it's like a kind of blackjack, or you're just going to keep drawing. You don't want to bust and go over a certain number of notes. Here you can play this as the sixth note of an active key signature, so it's kind of a wild. Draw a card from a discard pile. Turn down an action that's played against you. Draw two more cards. Negate all other players' instrument powers for a turn. Skip a total of 2 or 3 moves. You're under arrest. Rest in pieces from any combination of players, so you can cancel moves from other players. I mentioned the instruments. Each player has an instrument which will give you a special ability. So like, for example, if you're bass and you complete a chord, you can draw 2 accidental tokens, while a vocalist is immune to rests, and you can play rest cards as surprise cards instead. Now, that seems like there's a lot going on, and there is, but that's what you're going to do. The first person to complete 3 chords wins the game. So components here is kind of a mixed bag. A bag actually comes here with the game. This is like a deluxe Kickstarter version, I think. I don't know if there's an actual other version of the game. These tokens are fantastic. At that point, I kind of ran out. Now, look, I love the artwork for this game. I love the hilarious-looking pictures. I'm a big fan of that. It's turned down for what? I like that. But wow, whoever decided foil cards was a good idea for a game. These are almost impossible to read. Do you think it's hard to read them on camera? It's just as hard in person. The note cards, there's lots of information written on these note cards, but you only need a little bit of that. The rules are just a mess. They're full of music theory, which, is great, except that I want to learn how to play the game. So they put some music theory at the end. They do go over all the different cards, and then they'll suddenly start with seventh steals. How does a seventh steal work? It's important. The steel tonality must match the chord tonality. At that point, anyone who doesn't know music is going to be very confused. And so this rule book is okay. I mean, there's a ton of room in the box to hold everything. And like I said, it kind of looks neat that it's all shiny and everything, but functionally this is a mess. Component issues aside, and that's a problem, right? This game doesn't know what it wants to be. On one hand, it's a take that game. It's like, ha ha ha, I'm going to use one of my 3 moves so that you can't, I'm taking 2 moves away from you, which doesn't make any sense. But, ha 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 ha, I canceled that card with this card that you saw me draw so you knew I had it. And there's just a lot of take that and do this, and this is a wild card, which is clearly better than other cards. And there's a mixture of that. Okay, so that's a game, and that game's not for me, but I get it. But then they mix that game with fairly convoluted music theory. The biggest that it just blows my mind is these accidentals. These are problematic for 2 things. One, because it makes sense that I can turn a C sharp into a C or a C into a C sharp. That's pretty, easy for most people to understand. But to play 4 of them on the same note to change it up and down the scale is going to make people's eyes cross. It's not something that's easy to understand. Even I'm sitting there looking at the notes on the piano in my head because they don't normally write music with multiple sharps and flats. And so that's weird. Then secondly, you can discard cards to get more of these, but it's a 1/4 note. Who wants to do fractions? Yay, fractions! That's what it is when you're discarding cards to get these. Why would they not just make it a 1/4 note? If you're going to make it a certain currency, but to make it a 1/4, that's like saying, guys, you need to pay a coin and a half to do something, and you have 6 3/4 coins. That's just weird. And so there's so much music theory in the game. And look, I get it. I want to teach people music theory a little bit. You don't need to know a lot of music theory unless you're going to be heavily into music. But that complicated 7th chord, minor chords, all that stuff mixed with then a very, very, very boring basic game that's not balanced. Some instruments are clearly better than others. There's this, just going after each other. There's a bunch of little expansions for the game that add even more chaos. So it's this chaotic, crazy, take that style game mixed with convoluted music theory, and I cannot imagine who it's for. Well, I do know who it's for. It's for a bunch of people who know music theory back and forth. And they're playing this and they're having a great time because they understand it. And they want to teach other people this. But this is the equivalent of trying to throw someone in the ocean to teach them how to swim. They even have there's just a kid's game, just play with the cards. But even that's going to be a little complicated. The game shouldn't be much me looking at here's the chord card. I need a G, a D, an E. Okay, I got this, I can add. It's just so complicated to collect one. And then so you start playing a chord, and then someone else goes, I got this, and a wild. Boom. I got 2 wilds. It's mine. It's the game isn't fun. The game isn't interesting, and the game's complicated to learn and doesn't do its intended job. This game doesn't really teach you music theory. Instead, it assumes you already know music theory, and there's a huge difference there. I think games that are used to teach things are fantastic, but this game is kind of like that really nerdy friend who tries to explain the entire Marvel universe to you while you're watching one movie, and you're like, overwhelmed. This is the same thing, but on a musical level. And then all that combined with a game that's just not good. This saddens me because I wanted to like this so much, but I cannot recommend this pretty much to anyone. So that's Lord of the Chords. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment, very disappointing.